Alright, this is the third in a series of recordings for the perineum, and in this one we're going to be talking about the neurovasculature and the lymphatics. Alright, so starting with the vasculature. The internal pudendal artery is the key for the perineum, so just recall that course, how it travels, okay? And if you look at the very top box, the internal pudendal artery, it describes that course. The way you want to look at this table, because there is a bit of a flow to this, is you want to start with the origin column. And you start with the green box. The internal iliac artery is the major origin, gives rise to, on the left, the internal pudendal artery. Now, the internal pudendal artery has a number of branches. Go back to the origin and you look at the two blue boxes. The two blue boxes point to three major arteries, three major branches of the internal pudendal, the perineal, deep artery, and dorsal artery of the penis and clitoris. Now, if you look at that perineal artery, the perineal artery has two branches. You go to the origin column, look at the red box. The two branches are the posterior scrotal or labial and the artery of the bulb of the penis or vestibule. So there's a bit of a flow. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you can go to the course. I've highlighted the major courses of the vessels that you need to know. And finally, their distribution. A couple that I'll highlight. Deep artery of the penis is actually traveling in the corpora cavernosa itself. So it's supplying the erectile tissue of the corpora cavernosa. Okay, so it's really contributing to the rigidity of the erection. The dorsal artery, in males in particular, is supplying mostly the corpus spongiosum and the rest of just the tissue of the penis, with the exception of the corpora cavernosa. So a number of different images here that you can use to try to figure out all the different branching patterns. The one thing I will caution you here is just that the artery of the vestibule of the vagina in this diagram and in this diagram is showing that it's coming off the internal pudendal artery, which is wrong. It should be coming off the perineal artery. All right, but so use these diagrams to sort of figure out the flow. Same thing here. The artery of the bulb of the penis is shown to come off the internal pudendal, but it should be coming off of the perineal. All right, so here you can see how that deep artery of the penis is actually within the corpora cavernosa. Okay, whereas the dorsal arteries are still within that perineal fascia, or that deep fascia, but they're not within the corpora cavernosa, so they're supplying basically all the other structures of the penis. All right, the other important structures here in terms of venous drainage, the deep dorsal vein and the superficial dorsal vein, and it's just important to note that the deep dorsal vein is draining the erectile tissues, and you can see that it's actually deep to that deep fascia, whereas the superficial vein is draining all the superficial structures of the penis, and it's outside of that deep fascia. Alright, so that's the vasculature and just a brief overview of the venous drainage in males. Innervation, three major nerves: pudendal nerve and its two major branches, and then the parasympathetic nerves, and then the ilioinguinal genital femoral. Alright, so here's a description of all of that, and I'm just going to go to some images instead, so you can follow along with both. So the pudendal nerve, highlighted by the red box, is your major supply to the perineal region. Two major branches. The perineal nerve in blue, in the blue box, is going mostly to sort of the base of the penis as well as the scrotum. And then the other major branch is the dorsal nerve of the penis, which is innervating the penis itself, and particularly sensory innervation. All right, so it's the key sensory innervation to the penis. The innervation to the erectile tissues is different. It's coming through the parasympathetic fibers, S2 to S4, via these cavernous nerves, which is highlighted by the blue, light blue. Okay, so those cavernous nerves are those parasympathetic fibers that are going through that prostatic plexus in that deep tissue, or that dense connective tissue of the prostate, and then it's continuing on to the penis to supply or the erectile tissues. Okay, so that's where the parasympathetic control comes from. Okay. And then finally, the ilioinguinal and the genitofemoral, which are not shown here, are just going to supply, again, part of the scrotum and part of the, just a very small part of the perineal region. All right. In females, again, dorsal nerve of the clitoris, part of that, like a major branch off the pudendal nerve, highlighted in red, and then the blue arrows are pointing to the dorsal nerve of the clitoris. Okay. Sensory innervation to the clitoris. Okay. The parasympathetic information is actually controlling erection. Okay. Other major nerve is the perineal nerve, which is again applying the sensory innervation more to the labia majora, labia minora, and the perineal skin around that region. Okay, so that's sort of a general overview of the innervation and the major nerves. All right, this slide is just sort of giving you a description of the innervation or the nervous control for the sequence of events for sexual stimulation in males. Okay, so it starts with erection. Erection is controlled through the parasympathetic system via those cavernous nerves. The bulbospongiosis and the ischiocavernosus muscles are also stimulated through the perineal nerves to contract. And what they do is they compress the veins, and by compressing the veins, you decrease venous return, which also helps to facilitate erection. Emission is the process where sperm is delivered and seminal fluid is delivered to the urethra, and that's controlled by the sympathetic system. Ejaculation is a complex process which involves all the different autonomic controls and somatic controls. So sympathetic is closing the internal urethral sphincter so you don't get retrograde ejaculation. Parasympathetic is controlling the urethral smooth muscles to move the ejaculate forward through the urethra. And the bulbospongiosus muscle is contracting over top of that spongy urethra through the perineal nerves. Somatically, it's a reflex to contract those bulbospongiosus muscles to move the ejaculate forward. And then finally, there's a remission period where the sympathetic nervous system sort of kicks in, and it causes contraction of the arterioles, opening of the anastomosis between the arterioles and the venules to move blood away from the penis to stop erection. Okay, so that's just a bit of a physiologic overview. And then finally, lymphatic drainage. What I really want you to focus on is just the fact that the skin and the superficial tissues in the male and the female are draining into the superficial inguinal lymph nodes, which are palpable. Okay, so for example, you have affection of the penis, the lymphatic drainage to the inguinal lymph nodes, which can be palpated. All right, so that's the neurovasculature and lymphatics.